What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you. As always, it's Wednesday, February 26th. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. Blowing, a multiple goal lead last night and losing in overtime to the Leafs. Unacceptable, man. Celtics on a nice streak, but we'll talk about the Celtics in a bit. I'm wearing my Celtics hat, but I may not be going that way with my plays today. Yesterday, 3-3, but it was a winning night, and it was the weirdest winning night and probably the ugliest that I think I've ever had. I don't think I've ever had a winning night feel like a losing night more than that was last night. It was crazy, dude. I was so wrong about some of those games. It started off nice with Western Michigan with an outright win, and as I always say, sprinkle a little bit on the money line when you're taking an underdog, man. Even a big underdog, I'll still throw like 3% of the bet on the money line just to have a little bit there, just because you're still saying there's a little bit better chance than what you're being given that that team's going to actually hit and actually win. That's basically what you're saying if you're going to bet that team to begin with on the spread. Smaller line, like a single-digit line like it was in that game, 10% on the money line. So that was part of the reason why the 3-3 was a win last night. Western Michigan hit on the money line. That was the only underdog money line hit, though. Of course, hockey has been awful. Both underdogs in hockey lost, but that was actually part of the reason why it was still a winning night, because you pay less on those hockey underdogs. And I do have one today, too. If you play like the money line, you're putting a little bit less on it to win the same amount that you're trying to win on other bets. So it's a little bit less costly. Mississippi State was just horrific. I mean, they got absolutely annihilated in that game, wire to wire. That is not what I expected. Alabama absolutely boat raced them and put up, like 110 points. Totally insane. I mean, Alabama is going to wind up being a 1 seed. In my opinion, Florida, I believe, has dropped from the 1 line. Houston may be up on the 1 line right now, which is what I have in my bracketology that I updated and released last night, which you can look at. I tweeted out a link to the spreadsheet. It's just totally autistic. No fancy graphics in that thing, although maybe I'd like to spend time to do that. But and then what else did I have last night? We had a couple of the other two underdogs hit on the spread and didn't win outright because they were both big underdogs. With LSU covered and didn't win. And then Dallas Mavs, baby. They came right in under that number by like 1.5 points, but that was a 1-point game with like 4 minutes to go, I think. So at that point, it looked like the game could potentially go either way. And then I think there were probably some intentional fouls at the end. Luckily, the number wasn't 7 or 7.5 on that one because it landed 8 somehow at the end of that game. But it covered the 9.5. So that's what we got there. And then was that it? I think that was it, right? Yeah, those are the 3 winners and the 3 losers, I think, right? Yeah, that's it. All right, let's move on to today, man. Want to not take too much time here, not belabor this, as I always say, but this is a big college basketball slate. I'm going to jump right into this, one of the biggest matchups of the day, ranked Michigan State and Maryland. Both teams ranked, both teams deserving of the ranking. Maybe not this specific ranking, but these are both good teams, man. These are 2 of the top teams in the Big Ten, which the Big Ten is starting to look a little top-heavy. Number 8, Michigan State. Number 16, Maryland. I'm going to lay the points with Maryland in this game. I think this is a spot to do it, and despite the fact that Maryland is ranked, they have been unranked most of the year, which I've been saying they're flying under the radar, and now they're ranked, and they're actually probably no longer flying under the radar, but this is kind of a weird spot where I actually think this is still a sandwich spot for Michigan State. And Michigan State, after that kind of road bump or speed bump that they hit going out to the Pacific Coast, they've kind of righted the ship here with 3 big wins in a row, but that's kind of the problem. I think this is a sandwich spot because beating Purdue, beating Michigan, I mean, Michigan's a huge rivalry game, but both of those teams are ranked higher than Maryland has been all year. Now it's a second straight road game, and they got to go out to the East Coast, and they got Wisconsin in their next game, which I know it's not for 6 days, but that is a big game, too, and that may have, like, 1 seed implications as far as other regular season. It has implications as far as who the regular season Big Ten winner is going to be. But also, Michigan State has only played 1 game on the East Coast all season, and it was not a true road game. It was actually semi-home for Rutgers. I believe it was at Madison Square Garden, which was weird. I took Rutgers in that game, and they just got in under the number for me on the +7.5. I was able to get the cover on that. Just pretty weird game, pretty ridiculous, but it wasn't the greatest performance from Michigan State. And Michigan State, I mean, yeah, they've done pretty well on the road, but in some of these weird travel spots, they haven't done quite as well. They did lose both games on the Pacific Coast. They've beaten some of these other teams on the road, but Maryland may be the best team that they're facing on the road all year, besides Michigan, maybe better than Michigan. I forget where Ncaab has these two teams ranked right now. But this is going to be one of their most difficult road matchups, and I think it's in a difficult spot. And Maryland likes to play really fast, typically, or pretty fast, and they're good at it. Michigan State, they can kind of chameleon, and they can play different tempos, but I think they prefer at a slower pace than what Maryland is going to throw at them. Maryland is almost in the top 50 in tempo. Maryland actually very balanced on both offense and defense. You can see here on KenPom. They're the better offense and the worse defense, but very slight, very balanced for both teams here. So this is a close matchup, which basically you're just laying the home. You're basically just laying home court here for the most part, as these teams are very closely ranked. As KenPom has them both closely ranked as well. He's telling you Michigan State's slightly overranked and Maryland's slightly underranked right now. But that combined with the spot, I think KenPom has this being like a 3-point game. And Maryland, the line actually has moved up, I believe, on Maryland. Let me see. It was 2.5 at one point. Now it's 3.5 with juice. We see 78% of the tickets on them right now. 74% of the cash on Michigan State. I don't think I buy that's where the cash is right now. I mean, something has driven this line up, unless it's like an injury or something like that. But I think the spot makes sense for Maryland. That's going to be the first play. Let's move on. All right. We got, let's see. I mean, Ole Miss is at Auburn. I mean, this is, I guess, an interesting game, even though Auburn is a double-digit favorite here. Auburn, they do have Kentucky up next. This is going to be a look ahead. I don't know. It is road revenge for Ole Miss as well, as Auburn went on the road and beat them by 10 points already. I mean, of course, Auburn is they're still the best team in the country, although KenPom has them pretty close with Duke, 1 and 2. But Auburn, I mean, I would give them the edge just because they face a way more difficult schedule. And their record against that schedule is insane. But in this spot, I don't know, man. I mean, you're laying double digits with Auburn here. They got bigger games up on deck with Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Alabama all to finish the season. So it is possible they kind of take this Ole Miss team for granted a little bit. Ole Miss, they've fallen out of the rankings with 2 straight losses, so they kind of need some wins. They just lost at Vandy. Not a great loss, but it is a second straight road game for them. I mean, gun to my head, I guess I would be looking to take the points with Mississippi, but I'm not going to do it. Auburn down from 13.5 to 12 and have 75% of tickets on 56% of the cash, so the early market read does look in agreement with me, but you got to take these market reads with kind of a grain of salt early in the morning, man. Obviously, I'm like kind of fading the percentages in that Maryland play there. Texas A&M is coming off a couple of big games, man, as well. They lost kind of badly at Mississippi State, but then they had a big game against Tennessee. This is a big game, close game. This is one of the highly advertised games of Saturday. This was the ESPN noon game, and it was close basically the whole way, man. It kind of delivered what we thought. It was a fairly low-scoring game up until, some intentional fouls at the end of the game. Basically, this game was close. It was within one possession in the final minute of the game, and now A&M is coming off of that, and they got to play Florida next. So, yeah, this does look like a sandwich to me for Texas A&M. So this game would be Vandy or pass for me in this game. And they have Auburn actually up after Florida as well. So, and Vandy is going to be a little bit more motivated here as well, because Texas A&M, I mean, they're just fighting for whatever their seed line is going to be. Like, do they really care if they're going to be a 2 or a 3 or whatever in March Madness once it comes to that? I don't really think so. Vandy, I have them in the tournament right now, but they would like to get this win, you would have to imagine, to try to secure their spot in the tournament. So I think they are going to be more motivated. They still have a little bit of resume building to do, but they've faced a lot of tough games in a row, man. Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky. They got blown out by Kentucky, though. Came back home, had a nice bounce-back win over Ole Miss, but now they have to go back out on the road to Texas A&M. So this is the reason why I'm not actually going to play it. A third straight road game. Pretty difficult to do, really. And coming off a pretty big win, so the spot is a little bit difficult for Vandy. I would still lean that way, but it's not as strong as some of these other plays. A&M down from 8 to 7.5 with 83% of tickets, 95% of the cash on them. So it looks like the cash percentage is coming in on them to some extent, but I don't know if I would buy that as the line has ticked down a little bit. And you got to put a lot of weight into my opinion, man, which would be that if you're going to play this game, it would be to take Vandy, in my opinion. Texas A&M also plays a slower tempo game. They play defense. They don't hit a lot of three-pointers. They don't score. They don't put up high scores, really, so that makes it a little bit more difficult to cover a number like this as a favorite as well. Vandy does like to run the ball more, though. They may not be able to do it in this environment at A&M. But again, if A&M slows the pace down, that makes it a little bit more difficult. It doesn't make it does make it more difficult for Vandy to run the offense they want to run, but it also makes it more difficult for Texas A&M to try to cover the spread. All right, I am so out of breath, man. This is wild. George Mason, I mean, they were rolling along, man, and basically a bunch of the bracketologies had them winning the A10 just because all the bracketologies, the people that don't pay attention to how good these teams really are or how not good they really are, just say, oh, this team is atop this conference. They're going to be the representative for this conference in the tournament. And I'm like, no, VCU is way better than George Mason, and that's what happened. And I think that was kind of a reality check for George Mason. And when you're a team like George Mason and you're rolling like this, you have so many wins in a row, then you have this big, like, emotional get-up game, and you get slammed down like that game against VCU. I think you're going to have a hangover effect into the next game. So I think if you're going to play this game, I think it would be to take the points with Fordham, as ugly as that is, or just not play the game. Fordham, yeah, they're not a good team. George Mason is not quite as good as their record looks. So Fordham has lost 4 games in a row. They are playing a third road game in 4 games, though. I keep saying days. I mean games. My mistake. If I said that when I talked about Vandy there as well. Fordham, I mean, they did play a couple of these road games somewhat close, but I mean, Richmond is a terrible team, so I don't know what you can really take away from that. They are going to be looking for wins, though, at the very least, to try to end that loss streak. I'm not going to play this game, but I'm just pointing it out because I think George Mason could be in a bit of a hangover. They're sitting at a 13-point favorite right now. All right. Scott, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Let's see. I mean, St. Bonaventure and St. Joseph's, the Battle of the Saints is going to be one of the better A10 matchups. My opinion in this game is that the records are a little bit misleading looking with Bonaventure. Even though they have a worse conference record, they have the better overall record. And them being still in single-digit losses and St. Joe's having double-digit losses, I think kind of makes this line look a little bit crazy. Like, why would somebody, like, if you're a public bettor, why would you look at these teams' records and be like, oh, I'm going to lay 6.5 with St. Joe's here? But the line is that way for a reason. The odds makers are telling you St. Joe's is actually the better team here. I don't believe these teams have faced each other this year. I don't think George Mason has faced Fordham this year either. I try to look at the schedule. I'm like, did they play? I don't even know, man. We can look real quick. No, they've not played. So these are first-time matchups. The A10 has enough teams in it that all the teams don't play each other twice. St. Joe's is just kind of, I mean, they're coming off a game against Richmond. I mean, that's whatever. And just staying at home. So it's not a bad spot for them really at all. Whereas Bonaventure, I don't think it's really a bad spot for them either. They're coming off a win over Duquesne. But they're playing a third road game in 4 games as well, though. So that is a little bit difficult, actually. So, yeah, I mean, this game for me would be St. Joe's or pass on the game. I mean, obviously I'm passing. Unless I put up, that's why I have the banners, man. Unless I put up the banner, I'm not playing it. But I am telling you explicitly which games I'm actually playing. All right, let's keep going here. Yeah, I do want to skip a bunch of these, but I can't skip this one because this is one of my plays on UIC, Illinois, Chicago, plus the points, plus 7.5. I think Ken Baum has this number a little bit lower than that. I think I'm only like bucking Ken Baum, I think, really on one of these games to any extent, really, and it's really not a whole, it's not much of a bucking, let's say. This might be an 8-point spread right now. 7.5, 8, not a huge difference in basketball. As I always say, the 7 is really the 3-score cutoff there where teams stop intentionally fouling, even though I know Dallas lost by 8 for me last night, but they still covered because that number was higher, thankfully. But I don't like the spot here for Northern Iowa at all, man. There are a lot of situations that I look for coming into play here. Most of all, Northern Iowa, first off, they're in a letdown spot, man. I mean, they just took Drake, who's the best team in the Missouri Valley, into overtime at home. This is a huge game for Northern Iowa, man. Big conference game. They take the best team in the conference to OT, and they fall short and lose. That's brutal. And even though this is going to be their final home game, I think the atmosphere in that game was kind of like that was really their final home game. And that almost had the energy, I think, of like a senior night type of game. This is technically senior night, but this is one of the few types of situations where I'll actually fade a team on their senior night because you usually don't want to. But in this situation, I will, because that was a huge game against Drake. And they still have a game against Bradley up to finish the season. So this is a sandwich spot between the two teams that are above them in the conference right now. Even though, yeah, they can't afford a loss here, but they're laying a lot of points here. So you don't even need UIC to actually win this game. You just need them to cover. And Northern Iowa coming off a game like that with a big game on deck, it's a sandwich spot, man. So I don't know what we're really going to get out of them. And not only is it a sandwich spot, let's make it even better for Illinois Chicago. Northern Iowa, they already beat Illinois Chicago 83-56 on the road at their place. They just completely embarrassed them by 27 points. So this is a pretty major road revenge angle, man. When you have an avenging road underdog in a second conference matchup, and they also got absolutely blown out in that first game at home, you really want to start looking towards that team. So there are a lot of angles coming into play here, man. I think this is a strong confluence of angles here. And if you look at that game, I mean, it was, Northern Iowa had the win the whole time, but look at the percentages in this game, man. UIC actually out-rebounded them in the game, but Northern Iowa shot 56.6% from the field, 61.1% from three. Absolutely ridiculous outlier percentages there. That is not going to happen again. Even though, UIC did lose the turnover battle, so that is a concern that they lost the turnover battle at home. But, I mean, this game, the shooting percentages were just such outliers, and UIC actually shot particularly poorly as well. 32.2% from the field, 21.7% from three. So I think that makes this look like there's going to be a lot of regression here, or progression back to some sort of mean as well. So I like that play. Illinois Chicago plus the points. Skip the bets, skipping the pussy. I treat all the games I don't talk about, I'm treating like the pussy, man. They're like pussy. You got to just avoid them. Don't be gay, brother. Avoiding the pussy is as straight as you can get. All right, what else we got happening here? I mean, George Washington, Loyola Chicago is a fairly big game in the A10. Oh, I skipped one of my plays, but I'll jump back to it in a second. I mean, this is a game. Loyola Chicago is only a 3.5-point favorite in this game. They are coming off a big win over Dayton, though, and they're on a nice run right now, winning 4 games in a row, 6 of their last 7, including beating St. Louis and Dayton in their last 2 of their last 3 wins. Could be a bit of a spot where they might overlook George Washington, even though George Washington does have a good record. That's a big win over Dayton, man, and they got St. Louis again next. So those teams are closer to them in the conference stage. George Washington's kind of fallen down, so maybe it's actually not the greatest spot for Loyola Chicago, even though I've been saying George Washington's overrated all year, and you want to look to actually find value going against them, but maybe in this spot you don't. George Washington coming off a pretty easy win over a bad UMass team, so I think the spot actually does set up better for George Washington in this particular game, even though I don't like them in general, and I think they're overrated. Loyola Chicago laying 3.5. Probably would lean to take the points, though. Where I'm not going to take the points is this Furman game. I'm going to lay the points, minus 15.5. I know I don't usually lay huge numbers like this, but in this case, I think it calls for it. They're playing the Citadel, and the Citadel is an awful team, dude. I mean, they have no wins in the conference this year in the SoCon. They're easily the worst team in the conference. But what are they coming off of? They just went to Chattanooga, who's one of the best teams in the conference, as 17.5-point underdogs, and they lost by 1 in this game. Chattanooga had a 16-point lead with 6 minutes to go, and I think they completely took their foot off the gas, thought the game was over, and then all of a sudden it's a 2-point game with 2.5 minutes left. Citadel absolutely had this furious comeback against them, and almost were able to win this game as a monster underdog and almost get their first conference win. After that, now it's a second straight road game. I don't like it at all, man. I think it's a bad spot for Citadel, and that's kind of where the handicap starts. You usually want to look, when you have a really inferior team and they're coming off like a max effort like that where they just fell short, even if they're playing a good team in their next game, they just can't keep that up. They can't keep it up, man. They got ED. They can't keep it up that next game. Furman, I actually think, is in a better spot. looking at this. They came off this game against Samford that was a huge win. They played 2 big games in a row against UNC Greensboro and Samford. Big road upset win for Furman against Samford to season sweep them. So I think they were in a letdown spot coming off of that, and they almost lost to VMI. So now here's where we have the other part of this handicap where Citadel is coming off almost winning as a massive underdog. Furman almost lost as a massive favorite. They were a 12.5-point favorite against VMI. And this is almost the inverse of that other game. Furman was up double digits in the second half, and they took their foot off the gas. And then all of a sudden, oh shit, this game is like almost within one possession in the final minute of the game, although it never was really a question that they were going to win this game, but it did wind up a 4-point game. So I think that is a little bit of a scare for Furman in this one. And they had a bad turnover differential in this game, so that kind of led to what happened down the stretch in that game too. So you don't expect Furman to lose the turnover battle against inferior teams at home that often, especially not 2 games in a row, and especially not against the absolute worst team in this conference. And the other reason why I like this, and I don't think they're going to overlook Citadel, is because, well, first of all, they're coming off that not great effort against VMI, but also this is their final home game, so it is senior night for Furman. So I do think they're going to want to step it up for that reason, but also when they went on the road to face Citadel, Citadel almost caught them. This almost became a win for Citadel. Furman was a 13.5-point favorite in this game. So I think we're actually getting a really cheap number. If they were a 13.5-point favorite in this game and we're laying 15.5 here, this line should probably be like 18, man. I mean, unless there's personnel changes or something. I actually think you're getting a cheap number on this. Ken Baum does have this at around 16. So take from that what you will. But look at what happened in this game. Furman was winning the game pretty easily, coasting, and then all of a sudden they fell behind in that game, and Citadel actually wound up taking them into overtime in this game. So do you think Furman is really going to overlook this Citadel team, even though Citadel is horrific? Citadel took them into overtime, man. Furman is going to remember that. So even though you could look at this and say, oh, this is a road revenge angle, no, I don't really think so. And you have Furman as the way better team, and they almost lost this game. They had a really bad second half, and Citadel almost caught them. I think they're going to be focused. They're not going to let that happen again. So Furman is the right side in this game. It's up from 15.5 to 16 here, but I'm laying the 15.5, which I think that number is still out there. Ukulele streams, we'll see, man. I don't know if I'm going to start doing that or not. Nate, what's up, man? Greco. Greco is a good Greek place in Boston, man, over on Newbury Street. It's authentic Greek food. They got gyros, and they got their logo almost looks like one of those pedophile spirals, though. So that's not really what you want. But so I don't know if they're hiding something in the back, but they got good food there, man. They got a good traditional Greek salad there, and they make their own street donuts as well. It's a pretty good spot, man. Penn State and Indiana. I mean, you might think that I might want to fade Indiana here because it is a letdown spot technically for them, maybe. But I'm not going to quite get there with this one. Indiana is coming off multiple huge games in a row, though. But they've been pretty much playing well since Woodson decided, I'm going to step down after the season is over. It seems like it's actually sparked this Indiana team. They played close against Michigan. They beat Michigan State on the road. Then they had a close game against a pretty good UCLA team. And now they're coming off upsetting their in-state big brother in Purdue. That's a huge win for Indiana, man. Huge win. So, yes, they could be in a bit of a letdown spot coming off of that. And, yeah, I would not play Indiana in this game. It is also a road revenge spot for Penn State, as Indiana already went to Penn State and beat them there. And I think Penn State's kind of just been an undervalued commodity all year. But the problem that I have with this is that Indiana's got a Pacific Coast trip coming up, and I think they know that's not going to be easy. So I don't think they're going to be unfocused in this game, man, because they're right on the bubble right now. I know I tweeted out that I don't think they're going to be able to make the tournament unless they win the Big Ten. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit because now they beat Purdue. If they win both of these home games, go 2-2 down the stretch, and then they win multiple games in the Big Ten tournament, they may be in the discussion still. So we'll see. They probably need to win 3 of these 4, but again, I think that's going to keep Indiana focused, whereas normally this would look like a huge letdown spot of that huge rivalry win, and I would not lay the points still, like I said. I think you're also not getting value in doing so because everybody knows Indiana's the team everybody's talking about. They're the bubble team that everybody's talking about. What's going to happen to Indiana because they're such a big name. Like, are they going to make the tournament or are they not? So I would still only look to take the points with Penn State here. And Penn State isn't going anywhere, and they've kind of righted the ship after this really bad stretch of games where they lost 7 games in a row, but 4 of those games were on the road. 2 of them were on the Pacific Coast. It was not an easy stretch of games. They've turned it around, gotten some wins against Nebraska and Minnesota, so they have a little bit of momentum right now, though this is a second straight road game for them, and they do have Maryland in their conference, in their senior night game coming up, and then Wisconsin, so those are bigger games, but they're not going to overlook Indiana either because Indiana beat them at home. I mean, it's Indiana, and I think Penn State probably does want to play spoiler. I mean, why wouldn't you? So this game, I would still lean to Penn State, but the market actually looks against it, and I am not going to play this game. Like, again, usually I would say this is a letdown spot for Indiana, but in this spot, I don't want to get involved. Indiana up from 5.5 to 6 with the juice. 67% of tickets, 64% of the cash actually coming in on Penn State. So Penn State actually is looking like a public underdog right now, which is really not what you want to be on. But I will avoid that game. Avoid it like the pussy. Next up, Seton Hall plus the points. This is going to be a play for me. This is a letdown spot in my opinion. Villanova, I mean, they're not really in the bubble discussion, so I don't think they really think they're on the bubble. I think they're playing out the stretch here, and they're laying a lot of points on the road here. I know Indiana also is laying points as well. So if you take Penn State, you don't need them to win. You only need them to cover. So sometimes these teams, when the pressure is on, like Indiana, you don't want to lay points with them really because the pressure is a bit much, and they're really trying to just win the game. They're not really trying to cover, so we'll see. But Villanova, I mean, although I don't think the pressure is on them, that was a huge win for them, man, beating Marquette. They annihilated Marquette. Now they're going on the road to face the Seton Hall team. Seton Hall is awful, but Villanova does have their final home game up next against Butler. And yeah, if Villanova wins all 3 of these remaining games, and then they do something in the Big East tournament, they may actually put themselves in the tournament discussion, but I don't know that they're really thinking about that right now, and they don't need to win this. They don't need to cover to win this game, okay? They're laying a lot of points on the road. Seton Hall's bad, though. Villanova already beat Seton Hall at home by 13, or 12, excuse me. So I don't think they're really going to be – I don't know that they're going to be that focused here. And this is a worse spot than what Indiana is in my opinion. Villanova is playing a third road game in 4 games. They played a pretty tough game against UConn, too, and they blew that game. And they turned around and they beat Marquette anyway after Villanova had a big lead in that game against UConn and let it slip. And you could easily see them, just kind of falling into kind of a hangover spot and not being able to get up off the mat after that. But instead, they just blew out Marquette. But this was really, if you look at what happened in this game, man, this was a complete outlier of a game. Villanova, even though, yeah, they're actually pretty efficient offensively, they shot 57.7% from 3. That's not going to happen again, man. So I think you're going to see sort of a regression out of Villanova. And the thing about this is that Villanova and Seton Hall both like to play really slow. So this is likely going to be a very slow tempo game because both teams do that. And I think the points, you're not going to see a lot of points in this game. So that also is more conducive to having an underdog cover. This is a low total, up from 130.5 to 131. Looks like some movement on the over, but it's a low total, man. So the points are worth more. The number's down a little bit from 8 to 7.5 with juice. You may still be able to get 8 on this. We'll have to look after I'm done with this video here. But also, even though Seton Hall is terrible, the one thing that they're not that terrible at is defense. Yeah, they're really bad. Ken Baum has them below 200, which is really inexplicable. But mostly their offense is just horrific. They're in the bottom like 60-something offensively, but they're actually almost in the top 100 defensively. They're actually the better defense, believe it or not. Villanova, defensive efficiency-wise on Ken Baum, is actually worse than Seton Hall is. Villanova's offensive efficiency is actually way better, but they play really slow. So again, if you're going to get a really slow game, you're going to get points at home with the better defense, and I believe it to be a letdown spot. Yeah, I'll do it. Give me Seton Hall. Ken Baum, I believe, only has this number at like 6, I think, in this game, so expecting kind of a low-scoring game as well. So I think Seton Hall is the right side there. Moving on, we got, let's see. I don't want to talk about every one of these games, like I said. I mean, some of these games are just not that interesting. Kentucky and Oklahoma is interesting because it does have implications. Kentucky, they're coming off that loss to Alabama, but now they're playing a third road game in 4 games as well, and they got Auburn up next. So are they going to bounce back from that loss, or are they going to, is it like a bad scheduling spot, and are they going to fall into a sandwich spot anyway? Because that game against Alabama was a pretty big, like, emotional get up. I don't know which way this is going to go, but Oklahoma's coming off a big win themselves where I had them against Mississippi State. I played them. I thought it was a bad spot for Mississippi State, and Oklahoma went all out, like I said yesterday, to the point where one of their guys was like smashing his teeth on the court and whatever. It was a crazy, crazy game for Oklahoma, man. Now they're coming off of that, so you could argue they're going to be in a letdown spot after that, but I'm not sure about that because Oklahoma, like Indiana, they're right there on the bubble, man. So they need wins for their tournament resume. So I don't think they can have a letdown spot here right now, man. It might be tough to have a max effort 2 games in a row, though, but at least they're not traveling. It's Kentucky coming to their building, so I don't think Oklahoma's going to overlook them. So this is a tough handicap, man. Kentucky down from 3.5 to 3, laying the 3 on the road here, but it looks like the line is kind of moving in the direction of Oklahoma. I don't know. I don't think I would necessarily disagree with that. As Oklahoma getting points at home, and they are probably going to be the more motivated team there just because of needing wins to try to get themselves into the tournament, whereas Kentucky is obviously already going to be in. And again, I don't think Kentucky really cares if they're a 4 seed or a 5 seed or 4 or 3, I guess is what they're probably playing between, whatever. Arizona against Utah. I think Arizona's going to be in a bounce back here, man. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. With that Kansas State game, mega sandwich spot between Texas Tech and Houston. So I think you can overlook that one. Then they beat Baylor. Then this game against BYU, I mean, yeah, I do think that was a bad call at the end of that game. I don't think that was a foul. I think there were bad foul calls on both sides, but of course that last one really kind of handed the game to BYU. I don't think it should have been called. So Arizona's coming off that. They lost at home as a pretty substantial favorite. So I think because of that, they are going to be focused in this game against Utah, even though they do have Iowa State up next, which is a big game. I could see Arizona just being pretty angry about how that game ended and want to turn around and play better. Utah's in a weird situational spot, kind of a weird scheduling spot where they went out to Florida, Central Florida. And by the way, I didn't realize I completely escaped in that game. I was like, oh, UCF is winning. They were winning down the stretch. Yeah, they had a 7-point lead, or actually maybe even more than that. Might have been 9 or 10, actually, with several minutes to go, or less than several minutes to go. But when it came down the stretch, it was like a tied game, I think. And UCF scored to go up 2, and I needed them to win by 2.5. Maybe should have played the money line on that one, but when it's 2.5 or more, it says that the plus expected value, you're supposed to lay the points unless it's 1.5, or 2. Then you want to lay the money line on the favorite. As I pointed out, you can go back and watch some of my other videos where I explain that. But I guess UCF scored to go up 2, and then it was basically like they were gonna have to play defense. But I guess Utah turned the ball over and threw the ball off somebody's ass or something, and UCF came up with the ball and I either got fouled or scored again otherwise. So yeah, maybe I got a little bit lucky in that one, but whatever. Utah having to now travel. They had to travel all the way out to Florida for one game, and now they're coming all the way back to Arizona. It's kind of a weird spot for them. In this game, I would look to Arizona or just not play the game. The money looks like it is coming in on that side. They're up from 13.5 to 14.5 with juice. 56% of the cash on them, with 50% of the tickets evenly split. So it looks like you're kind of almost fading public sentiment by taking Arizona in that one too. Wake Forest, they need some wins, man. I mean, they're coming off a pretty embarrassing loss to NC State, but I think they were in a letdown spot. But you can't have losses like this. You can't have this home loss to Florida State. They returned to form and they beat SMU in a big bubble battle there. That was a big win for Wake Forest, but I think that put them in a letdown spot in this 4th road game in 5 games. Really weird spot for them, and they lost to their in-state rival there in NC State. I think NC State was a little bit more motivated there, man, because they know they're not going anywhere. They want to beat these better teams that are in North Carolina. Wake is going to have to return to form here, man. The last time they were on this floor, they lost to Florida State. So I would look to Wake in this game or pass, and Wake is a bubble team right now. They got to get these wins. Virginia, yeah, they're going to try to show up. Virginia's not going anywhere, but they're coming off these big games against Duke, North Carolina. They're facing a third road game in 4 games, even though I know these games were not close against Duke and North Carolina. So they're still going to probably try to show up and want to spoil it for Wake Forest. But still, I mean, the spot, I think Wake it would be the side to look for in this game. It would be Wake or pass, but they're down from 8.5 to 7.5 with juice, so the money looks like it's coming in disagreeing with me, and I disagree with that, man. I disagree with those who disagree with me. Texas at Arkansas. Let's get this done, man, and maybe I'll come back in the evening again to do NHL, NBA. Texas plus 3.5 is going to be the play in this one. Arkansas, there were a lot of professionals that were on Arkansas in their most recent game, and I just stayed off of it because they were coming off a couple of tough games against Texas A&M and Auburn, even though I knew they were still probably going to be motivated in this game because Arkansas, they're trying to play themselves into the tournament as well. I have them in the tournament right now in my bracketology, if you saw. That was a big win over Missouri. And some of these other teams are kind of playing themselves out to some extent, but I do have Arkansas actually in the round of 64 right now in my bracketology as well, just because their strength of schedule is good. They have some good wins on their resume, so I think that is where they'll be as far as it stands right now. But that is a big win over Missouri, man. And now, even though I have said this about other teams, Arkansas, yeah, they're going to need to win more games because they're trying to get into the tournament. But guess who else is in a spot like that? Oh, yeah, that would be Texas. Texas needs wins, and they need the wins more desperately than Arkansas does, and Texas is getting points here. Arkansas, again, they're coming off that big win over Missouri. That was a huge win, and now they've played 3 big games in a row and played them all competitively. And they do have some winnable games coming up on their schedule, too, so I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to be in desperation mode as much as Texas is going to be. Texas has got to be in desperation mode, man. They've lost 4 of the last 5 games. I played Texas in this game against Kentucky, and they got the win there. Then they went on the road, and what did they do? They lost by double digits to South Carolina, who had no wins in the SEC this year, although South Carolina plays decent defense, really, and they have been competitive in some of these games, but that is a loss that you can't take, man. If you're Texas, they got to bounce back from this. And to make this even better, Texas played Arkansas not that long ago, and I laid the points with Texas in that one because Arkansas was coming off some big game. Texas lost the game at home as a 7-point favorite. They lost the game at home to Arkansas. Now they're getting 3.5 points on the road. I think this line has gone way too far, man. I don't know if there are personnel changes here or what's going on here, but I think there's line value on Texas. Ken Baum has this line being at 2, I believe. And if Texas was a 7-point favorite at home, this line should really be closer to like Arkansas -1, man. And in the spot like this, it's a road revenge spot. Texas is going to be total desperation mode here after that horrific loss to South Carolina. I think they're going to be the more motivated team here. Arkansas may be a bit gassed after all those wins, and that win puts them in a better position than Texas is. Give me Texas with the points, man. And not only all that, but I believe you're getting the better defense with Texas as well. Let me see here. Ken Baum's got Arkansas. Actually, no, let me see. No, you're not, actually. Excuse me. Arkansas is the better defense with their offense. It's actually the worst offense, but anyway, Texas is the more balanced team, though, and you're getting what may be a decent defensive matchup here between 2 defenses that aren't that bad. Arkansas is going to try to speed it up, though, and Texas likes to play a little bit slower. We'll see what happens with that, but Texas is also lower in luck index. Both teams pretty low in luck index right now. They both face a pretty difficult schedule, so there's nothing to really see with these Ken Baum rankings other than the fact that Arkansas is only 5 ranking spots ahead of Texas, and again, I think this line should be a little bit shorter, in my opinion. Home court, you probably get, well, I don't know what you get for home court. I don't know what I would give Arkansas for home court. Maybe 3.5. So maybe the line, maybe based on that, the line is a little bit short, but not really because Ken Baum, like I said, has Arkansas only winning this game by 2 points. So I don't know if he's factoring in the spot or what. But again, for all those reasons that I just gave, Texas is the play in that one. And then we got, let's see, BYU and Arizona State. This is my final college basketball play before I get out of here. Arizona State plus the points. BYU, as we already said, they're coming off that win at Arizona. Now they're facing a second straight road game, doing the double Arizona leg here. BYU, that win over Arizona, that's going to basically clinch a spot for them in the tournament, man. I think BYU, they're in, so I don't think they have to worry as much about it. That was a huge win for them, going on the road, upsetting Arizona. They're up from 4 to 4.5 with juice in this game. I don't agree with that move. BYU is now up in the rankings, I think, for the first time as well. So a lot of times when that happens, you feel a little bit too high on yourselves for that reason as well. They're playing wait, what are they playing? Let me see. No, I thought they were playing a third road game in 4 games. They're not, because the last road game was West Virginia. But still, not only are they coming off that win over Arizona, but coming into that game, they smashed Kansas in the game before that. So I think they're definitely going to be feeling a bit high on themselves. And then they're going to come back home, and they have their final 2 home games and Iowa State mixed in there. So I think they may easily overlook Arizona State here, man. And it's an unfamiliar venue for BYU. I think with this weird conference realignments, they don't usually go to Arizona State. Playing the back-to-back Arizona leg like this and coming off beating Arizona with Kansas prior to that, yeah, I don't think it's a good spot for BYU. Again, I don't think they really have to worry about their resume that much at this point. Arizona State, they're just going to be playing out the stretch. They had lost 7 games in a row, I think, or 6 games in a row, I guess. But there were some pretty decent teams kind of in the mix there. I mean, Arizona, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Houston. You don't really expect Arizona State to necessarily win those games, although I expected them to beat Kansas State in that spot. Thanks, Arizona State. Arizona State, they're coming off a win, though. They went and they got road revenge against Kansas State. I think that's good. I don't think they're going to be too high on themselves or anything like that. I think what that's going to do is that's just going to break their losing momentum. Now they're coming back home where they've lost their last 4 games on the floor. Actually, 5. No, 6, 7. Oh, so they're terrible at home. So that's not good. But they've lost 7 straight games at home. I think they're going to be motivated, man. Even though, yeah, that means their home court is pretty bad. Like, they don't have a whole lot of a home court advantage here. But Ken Baum also, I think, has this line at, like, maybe 2 or something. He has the Seton Hall one at 8, by the way. That was the only one where I'm kind of going against him here. He has this line lower than this. I'm going to be on Arizona State in this one for all those reasons. I think that's a nice losing momentum killer there, beating Kansas State there. So give me Arizona State in that one. I believe they are actually the better defense as well, getting points at home, as weird as that might sound. They're playing BYU. BYU is very good offensively, not quite as good defensively. And Arizona State, yeah, both these teams actually Arizona State likes to play faster, so Arizona State maybe will speed up this game, even though they are the better defensive team. They might be able to speed this up and throw BYU kind of out of their element that way as well. Ken Baum also has Arizona State lower in the luck index as well, so he's basically telling you they're a little bit better than you think they are at this point, potentially, so that we have that going on as well. So you're getting in an advantageous spot. You're getting points with the better defense at home, so that's what I'll do. I'll give you my extra plays, and I'll talk about them when I come back tonight. I'm going to be on the Vancouver Canucks money line, just fucking fire. You could actually split the bet, half on the puck line, half on the money line. I'll talk about it tonight, but money line, I think you could just fire on the money line in that one. Vancouver Canucks, and then I'm going to be on the Detroit Pistons against my Boston Celtics at plus 4.5. Vancouver money line at plus 158 right now. That's going to do it for me. College basketball one more time. Maryland minus 3.5. UIC plus 7.5. Furman minus 15.5. Seton Hall plus 7.5. Texas plus 3.5, Arizona State plus 4.5. Tower Gang Tone on Twitter, patreon.com/Tower Gang to support the most hilarious podcast out there. We'll be with you tonight on Tower Gang as well, so you'll see me multiple times this evening, 9-11 p.m. Eastern. Let's get it done, baby. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Peace.